Brittany, I'm an alcoholic. Let's see. Yes, I'm nervous as all get out. I used to being in front of crowds. I was a theater major and did stand-up comedy, but I was always buzzed, and so this is different. So if I started telling jokes, I'm sorry. Let's see. When I was a brand newcomer, which I still consider myself a newcomer, my sobriety date is January 27th, 2014, so I just hit a year last week. But I love coming to speaker meetings because I feel like I could blend in more, you know what I mean? Like all the attention was focused on that person, and I wanted to hear that you did something worse than I did, that you felt worse than I did, that you had more people pissed off at you than I did, and I wanted to hear how exactly you got better, how you quit drinking. You know, it was such an alien concept to me. I didn't understand how, you know, and I do hear those things. That's still what I want to hear when I go to meetings. I want to hear that you were worse than me. That was a joke. So, see, I was born April 23rd, 1984. My mom had me when she was 15, and she did a wonderful job. Her and my biological father did get married, which lasted for about a year, and I do not have a relationship with him. I've found out, which it makes a lot of sense now, his absence. They were married for a year, and then I've probably seen him a grand total of 7 times my entire life, and he is in recovery now, is what I've heard, which is great. So there was no one else, though, close to me who, in my family, besides my great-grandfather, I heard, who is an alcoholic. I grew up, you know, my mom, for being a teenage mom, you would think like, oh, grew up in a wild party household. No, that woman is the worst drinker I've ever seen. Like, she's one of those people who will sit there with a glass of wine for 30 minutes, and I'm like, oh, just drink it, you know? And so I grew up where she married my stepdad, which he is my dad. They got married when I was 5, and he's the guy who will have 1 beer on the weekends, maybe, you know? And so I grew up, it wasn't taboo, they would drink very, very rarely, but it wasn't a big deal. And I took my first drink when I was 13, and I didn't remember that until I was in treatment, and they make you go back and do a whole inventory. And when I remembered it, it was crazy because I did community theater, and there was this party, and someone gave me like a half a glass of champagne, and it was just like instinct, like I chugged it, you know, and I immediately, when no one was looking, was sneaking to get more, you know, and I loved it, loved the way it made me feel. It was awesome, loved it. And throughout high school, I drank maybe 10 times in high school at graduation parties, friends' parties, and I was such a wuss. Like, I hated the taste of beer, and that's usually all anyone had. And so whenever someone would do a beer run, they'd be like, oh, and get a 6-pack of Zima for Brittany, you know, because I couldn't drink beer. And so I had, you know, it wasn't a problem. I did it socially very normally and wasn't a big deal. As far as me as a person during this time, I did average in school. I didn't really get in any trouble. I was a class clown. I got along well with everyone. I've heard a lot of, when I first started coming around, I remember hearing a lot of people in the program say that they felt out of place, or, you know, like they didn't belong or not good enough in school. And I remember thinking at first, like, well, I never felt that way. I don't know if it's that I never felt that way or I was overcompensated so well, because I think about it now, and I don't think I ever really felt comfortable, but I would die and choke before I would show you that. So I got really good at, and being an Army brat, we moved every 4 years, and so I just got really good at being whatever I needed to be for whatever the situation called for. I was in honors classes until, this is just a snippet of my personality, I was in honors classes until 9th grade, and I literally, I cannot imagine being this guidance counselor, this 14-year-old kid, and we were doing my class schedule, and I was like, you know, I've been thinking, I'd like to get out of the honors program because I would rather be an above average student in average classes than an average student in above average classes. Like, that is so pathetic. Like, I was so just lazy, and that was my reasoning. I did not want to be challenged. That was my logic. Like, well, I can be in an average class and look better. My God, it makes me just like die of embarrassment today thinking about it. But I did, and that really set the tone. I don't know where that came from. My parents are wonderful, but I think having me so young, my mom is my greatest supporter, which could be borderline enabler sometimes of that. I think she had guilt because we didn't have a lot. I didn't have a lot growing up material-wise, but I never needed for anything. Never felt that way. Definitely never needed for love. And she was supportive to a fault. And it was like I never got in trouble. Never, it was all smooth sailing. I never had any problems, really. And then, I graduated and applied to one college, of course, and didn't get in. And so I went to, this is here I graduated here at Pinehurst, and then I went to 1 year of community college, which I loved community college. It was so easy. Loved it. I remember thinking, this is brilliant. It was easier than high school. It was ridiculous. And then I decided to go back to where I was born, which is Clarksville, Tennessee, and I got a theater scholarship that would pay for half my tuition. That was based nothing on grades, you just had to audition. And so I went back there and went for a year, dropped out. This is a theme that also was always starting something, not finishing it. As soon as it started to get hard, or not even hard, just consistent. If you needed me to be there every day, like every day, I would lose interest, motivation, whatever. I threw away a $1,000 scholarship. It was the easiest requirements for a scholarship ever. It was essentially just free money for college, and I lasted about a year and then dropped out and decided I wanted to move to Chicago at the age of 20, and I did an internship at Second City. It's an improv place, when improv was really big. And I went there once again, went about halfway through the program, did it, and that's when when I was living in Chicago, I was still not a big drinker at this point, like maybe on the weekends. And I made it halfway through the program, then quit because, like I said, it got competitive and it got hard. And I wasn't shining brighter than anyone. I was an average student in an above average class, and I don't want to do that. I didn't want to do that. So I quit. And my phrase was, it just didn't feel right. That's always my go-to. It just didn't feel right, And the only person who has ever, from the teenager age, maybe tried to call me out on any of that was my dad. And bless his heart, he's the most quiet, reserved person, and he just doesn't stand a chance between me and my mom of just like, And I remember him trying to delicately say, like, well, maybe you should, actually follow through and see if it feels right, and you don't understand me, and just shenanigans. I shut him down. When you start to say something I don't want to hear, and this is something I'm still working on today, it's immediately criticism and bad Brittany, and I can't hear it, and you're attacking me, and so I just shut down. When that's not the case at all. So I went back to the college that I had a scholarship for, and this time didn't have a scholarship, so I got student loans, and went back and was a theater major again. And this was 22. About age 22, I discovered whiskey. So funny. Couldn't drink beer all those years. Vodka, didn't really do it for me. I remember one night someone handing me, like, here, try this, because I started working at a bar too, a pub, and everyone there drank. It was a second career was drinking when we got off work, and they were just horrified at my lack of drinking skills, that I just didn't like it that much. I didn't like beer or whatever. So I tried a whiskey and water one night, and buddy, she had arrived. That was the night, literally, Whiskey Brittany was born. That's what they started calling me. And that name stuck for about 10 years. And I don't know what it was. I loved it. And I just loved it. And I drank, all I would drink was whiskey for the next 8 years. And the reason I'm talking about it is because, too, my whole identity, even besides the fact of just being an alcoholic and physically loving it and craving it, was I found this identity in it. You know, Whiskey Brittany was fun. She was cool. She was, I started a band, of course, which was Whiskey Brittany and the Bootleggers. We weren't that bad. But, you know, and once again, that was something that started out strong start. People were coming to our shows, but when I started accepting gigs for bar tabs, the guys in the band weren't really cool with that. I was like, well, we can drink for free. Like 4 hours of playing. No, they didn't want to drive an hour to play for booze like I did. So that lasted maybe a year. And also, drugs are a part of my story, and the only reason I even mention them is to just reinforce how cunning and baffling alcohol is. So, no consequences. Dropped out of college again, somewhere in there. Like, I think I lasted another year and a half maybe this time. Still working at this bar. At 25, I met my match, and a fellow musician who drank 10 times more than I did, which was impressive, first of all. And we were a match made in heaven. And we were together. And all of a sudden, though, you know, he's getting arrested. And that's my thing. Like, if you're drinking and you're killing my time, then that's not going to work. You know, I loved him very much. And he was a binge drinker. Like, I drank every day. At this point, too, I drank every day. Usually to the point of being drunk, pretty much. Maybe miss a day if I was hungover, but I was by the age of 23, 24, I was drinking every day. And so I meet Tim, and the first year we're together. It's like Bonnie and Clyde times 10, just insanity. And he gets arrested 3 times in a month, and I'm like, listen, you kind of have a problem. You should probably stop drinking, you know. And and oh my God, he did. He quit drinking, just like that. Just quit drinking. Just quit. And first off, I was so supportive, and I did that hollow, if you want me to quit drinking too, I will, which we both knew was just BS. Like, I said that to be the supportive girlfriend, and I didn't stop drinking, and it wasn't really a problem for him until we actually stayed together for 3 years after he quit drinking. How? I don't know. I don't know how a sober person dated me. I really don't. But I remember him telling me, after he had been sober for about almost a year, him telling me, like, you really are an alcoholic. And of course, I still had gotten in no trouble, no consequences, wasn't losing jobs. I had jobs. To me, that's all I need. I have a job. I'm holding a job. I'm fine, paying the bills most of the time. But I remember the first time he was the first person he told me I was an alcoholic, and I was like, you're just jealous. You know, that's what I was thinking in my head. Like, he's just jealous because he was a real alcoholic. You know what I mean? Because he couldn't handle his liquor. So that's in my head, that's what an alcoholic was. Like, if you can't function and have a good time and keep drinking, then you're an alcoholic. So he tells me to quit drinking, and I'm like, yeah, okay. So I switched to peppermint schnapps, which worked for a while, surprisingly. And he caught me. He found these pills one day. I was taking these pills, and he was, very upset over that. And of course, I did I'll stop taking them. And he thought I did. And fast forward 8 months, I never stopped taking them. And this is one of those stories that I tell for partly to share. Like I said, when I come here to hear someone speak, I want to hear that you messed up. And it helps me. It's the one I'm incredibly ashamed, and it's weird, but I tell it because it's true. It happened. It was a little bit of a turning point, not the big turning point for me, but it's the truth, and it's something bad that I did. And every time I say it out loud, maybe it's selfish too, it gets a little lighter for me. There's these people that I had babysat for like 2 years. Always, they had 3 kids, 5, 8, and 10. And I remember the one lady called me one day, and I had been awake for 3 days partying, and she was like, "Hey, the kids are already in bed. Husband and I just want to go out and get a late dinner. Can you come over?" And I'll never forget, this voice in my head was like, "That's a really bad idea. You've been awake for 3 days partying. You probably shouldn't go watch someone's children." But the alcoholic and addict in me was like, "That's $50 right there that you need, that, you know, your boyfriend doesn't know that you just blew half of y'all's rent money." So we're getting a lot of that pattern of hiding, lying. I would steal from his tip jar. He had a band. He was a professional musician. I would steal money from his tip jar when he wasn't looking in the bar, because I would spend my work money on alcohol and drugs. And so that started this pattern of sneaking. And I just assumed he knew and was turning his head the other way. But he swears to me now that he had no idea. I mean, that's how slick I was. For almost a year, I was taking drugs and alcohol. You know, and he thought, I mean, he would see me, he would think I would have a beer or something out occasionally when he was playing, but I mean, I was drinking a bottle of whiskey every day. And so I don't know if it was one of those things where he didn't want to know, I don't know. But this just started a pattern of lying, hiding, sneaking. So I go over, the kid's already in bed, and I go over, and I don't know how she didn't know just by looking at me, but I was always really good at pulling it together last minute, which, you know, legal speed. I had a prescription too to Adderall. Legal speed will help you pull it together too, real quick. And the last thing I remember is walking down the steps to their basement. That's the last thing I remember. The next thing I remember, I wake up to a cop and them standing over me, and everybody's pissed off. It's the first time, I mean, I'd never even gotten pulled over for a speeding ticket or anything, and I wake up to this cop doing the smelling salts thing or something to me, that they had been trying to wake me up for an hour. They had come home, and I was passed out so hard that these people were friends with my boyfriend, and they called him. They're like, "We can't wake Brittany up." They came home, and we can't wake her up. And he said, "Look in her purse." And she was like, "Why?" He said, "Just look in her purse. Tell me what's in there." And they went and looked, and she was like, you know, there were tons of pills in there and a pint of whiskey, I think. And so he told them, my boyfriend, he told them, he said, "Call the cops on her." And they said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Yeah, call the cops on her." And they did. And so this cop, I wake up and I'm like, I have no recollection of anything. And this is the nicest cop in the world. You know, he stood outside with me, and he said, "You know, these people said that you've been babysitting for them for a couple of years, and that this is completely out of your character." And in my head, I remember having that thought of like, no, this is just the first time I've gotten caught. And it was weird. There was almost, as much as I was mortified, ashamed, terrified, because I didn't know. I mean, there were felonies involved. I had prescription things with me that did not have my name on them, and child endangerment. Those kids could have woken up and wandered outside. I mean, I was looking at felony charges, and I was so relieved too. I will never forget standing there talking to that cop, because I knew, like, it's over. I can't do this anymore. Like, the pretending that I'm fine, all of that, that's done. I am not fine. And as scared as I was, I was relieved. And I prepared myself in that moment, like, well, you had a good run, you know. It was bound to happen. Once again, I get graced with like this angel cop, and he talks to me, and he's like, "Well, they don't want to press any charges against you. I'm going to take you to the hospital. I'm not going to take you to jail. I'm going to write you." And I was like, "Seriously?" And he wrote me a misdemeanor drug charge, like a simple possession ticket, and which is just, I realize how lucky I am, very much. And that was the beginning of the end of the relationship. My boyfriend stayed with me for about 8 months after that. I agreed to go, and this is where I talk about how cunning and insane alcohol is, because you would think after, it's all out in the open, my boyfriend calls my parents, like, Brittany's got a serious problem, she's been lying to me for a year, taking drugs and drinking all the time, and da-da-da. So the next morning I wake up and I know, like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to do something, because everybody's flipping out. And it was my first thought, so I get up and I Google the other program, NA, I Google it, and I'm like, okay, I can do this, because my first thought literally was, well, thank God I can still drink. Like, that was my first thought. That's insanity. Like, not, oh, I could have harmed someone's children, or, oh, I'm going to lose my boyfriend, oh, my family. No, thank God I can still drink. And so I started looking up, but I knew I was going to have to do something, because the placating, I'll stop, that wasn't working with him anymore, and I did not want to lose him. And so I knew I had to do something, and so I was going to go to an NA meeting. So I'm reading through, and but alcohol is a drug. And I was like, shh, no, this isn't going to work either. So I agreed to go to rehab, right? So his sister, I have no insurance or anything, and I'm about to turn 28 years old. It was like a week for my 28th birthday. And so I get on, his sister gets me on this, she used to work at a free rehab there, and once again, I didn't get it. It wasn't, nothing bad had happened to me, I was so terrified of losing that relationship. I could not see how much danger I was putting myself in and putting other people in, that it was only a 28-day rehab that I was on the list in. And I remember thinking, like, I can't leave him alone for 28 days. He'll find someone else. That's how sick and twisted my thinking was I can't leave him alone for so my other drug was him. I was terrified. So I lied to him in true Brittany form and told him that the state was pulling the funding on this rehabilitation center just right before my name was supposed to come up too. I mean, what is the timing on the odds on that? I know, gee willikers, but and he bought it, or as much as he believed anything I said at that point. I think he had checked out mentally, and so I pulled it together in the sense of I pulled back a little bit. Let me rephrase it. I didn't pull it together at all. I was just a lot more careful. I remember him begging me to quit drinking, and I just still insisted. I was like, I thought by admitting I was a drug addict, I was so comfortable. Yes, I'm a drug addict. I tell people at the grocery store, like, I'm a drug addict. You know what I mean? But I can drink. It's okay, I can drink, but I'm a drug addict. No drugs for me. No, don't do that anymore. But I can drink. Sitting there, just killing myself with alcohol, just like, oh, don't touch that other stuff anymore. So, not for me. I just truly believed to the core of me that I was not an alcoholic, because it wasn't alcohol that caused any of those problems. Nope, it was other stuff, or it was him. So he leaves. Well, I'm home visiting right before Christmas 2 years ago, and he tells me over the phone, he's done. It's like, which this was, that doesn't matter what he said. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so that point, I could not, it was all his fault. And so I went back, got most of my stuff, and moved back here with my parents. And it was 2 years ago. And once again, I got a good job, started working like crazy, saving up money. And what's weird is I wanted to prove to him so bad at this point. Like, I went to only drinking like 3 to 4 days a week, which I thought was really cool. Like, look at me. I was working a job where I worked 10 hours a day. I had to be there at 6:30, and I also got addicted to work, to making money. And so I was like, look how good I am. You a-hole who broke up with me. I'm an alcoholic. Look at me. I'm making, all this money, and So that still, I wasn't an alcoholic because look how good I'm doing, obviously. So then, 2 years ago, then he was obviously the problem because after he was gone, I wasn't having any problems anymore. I was doing great. Once again, though, after about 3 or 4 months of working this job like crazy and saving money and drinking very rarely, to me at that time was 3 to 4 days a week. That was very rarely. Still no consequences, no problems, but all of a sudden, I noticed my dad he's like, because I would come home because I had to work at 6:30, I would just come in with my bottle of whiskey like, hey, what's up, parents, and go upstairs to my room. And, my dad was like, that's really not normal. And I was like, I'm really stressed out, and so once again, he was the only person very tentatively to kind of be like, this is not normal. And I wasn't having any of it. Wasn't going to hear it. It's his problem, not mine. So then once again, my solution was, because I was, they were on my case a little bit. Didn't like that. No, don't criticize me. Saving up, I got what I needed from you, stayed there 6 months, saved up enough money. I'm moving to Savannah, Georgia now. It's another thing. Huge geographic cure. Love to move. God, I love moving. Love it. Just packing up the apartment and the car on the road. Just all the problems that are left back there, right? No. So I moved to Savannah not this past summer, the summer before that. And that's when all of a sudden, I would say, after being there about 3 weeks, what I considered alcoholic drinking started. I couldn't hold down a job. I was the best, worst bartender you've ever seen. Once again, I was supposed to be babysitting I had family who lived there, my aunts, and at least this time, I just showed up plastered to take care of someone's children. I didn't try and get one over on them. I just showed up and was like, I'm here to watch your kids. I'm drunk, And they called my parents. They were like, there's something wrong with Brittany. She's been acting, and they would call me, I wouldn't come out of my apartment. And it feels like, I've talked to other people in the program about this, of trying to figure out when it happened, when that line was crossed. Because when I very first got sober, I remember saying it felt like functioning, not functioning overnight. And I'll never know when, I don't know how, and I don't care. Now I don't care. I don't care because I got to the point, and once I've hit that point, I know that I can never have one drink because I had the phenomenon of really craving for the first time, as in, I went through 3 jobs in 2 weeks there. Showing up drunk to my family's house to watch their kids. This was crazy stuff that and nothing else mattered except I was that round-the-clock drinker at that point. Sometime after I moved there, I woke up in the morning and I had to have a drink. And then after that, I had to have 10 more. And I started experiencing that physical craving feeling for the first time, which is just insanity. Like, I felt like a wild animal. Like, I would claw my mother's eyes out to get a drink because that's how bad I needed it, that obsession. It was all-consuming, powerful, insane. So I lasted in Savannah about 3 months, and once again at this time, I say this, I'm someone who has never, I just don't have a right to ever to question if there's a higher power of some sort in this world, because I should be dead 10 times over. I should definitely be in prison 10 times over. It's just insane. I look at the situations I put myself in and other people in, and that no one ever got hurt. It's humbling. It's overwhelming when I think about it, when I really think about it, how many people could have gotten hurt, me driving, how I could have, just the places bad places, questionable characters, all I will say is just, and that I remained unharmed. So after me not contacting my family back, not leaving my apartment for several days to a week. I don't remember. My mom shows up on my doorstep because I quit answering the phone. But and my mom shows up on my doorstep and come to save the day. So she takes me back here, and my poor parents were just no one knew what to do. We had never, no one close in my family had ever experienced anything like this. It was, and they thought, God bless them. I told them, of course, yes, I'm going to stop drinking now. I'm here now, safe with you guys. I'm going to start drinking. I think I maybe lasted 10 hours before I was sneaking out the back door. I mean, I would sneak out. Like, they had no clue what they were dealing with. I couldn't stop, which they never have hardly any alcohol in their house. I started having cravings, but I remember drinking my mom's cooking sherry. That's gross, that's not cute. And I'll just remember the shock on their faces. They really genuinely believed when I said I'm going to stop drinking. They really thought. And I thought that I meant it at the time. I really thought that I did, and I realized I can't do this. The only way I can equate it is feeling like an animal. I've always been a control freak, shocking, kind of person that I just could not fathom. Wow, I really can't do this, and so they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do. Threatening, bargaining, all of that, pleading, tried all of it. So after about 3 weeks, something happened. It was God. I don't know. I took my keys and my wallet. I brought them to my parents, and I said, I'm under house arrest. And I remember their face, I was scared of myself. I was scared of myself, for other people, because I knew this is insane. This is insane. So I started trying to do some research. I have no insurance. I have no money. Found Daymark, and I was still I was drinking NyQuil at this point to try and, because I was getting the shake stuff going on, and going through withdrawals, but I wanted to stop. I wanted to stop so bad. And to the point where, I took control of it. Essentially, I didn't take control of it, but I was just finally threw in the flat with my parents of listen, you can't help me. I need help somewhere else. And so I found Daymark, and my mom took me there, and I talked to the counselor there, and I got on a waiting list for a rehab in Charlotte, which was free. It's the only and I'll never forget sitting in that waiting room at Daymark and just feeling utterly hopeless. And I'd heard that expression before, hopeless. Oh yeah, hopeless. No, feeling hopeless, worthless, useless, purposeless, all the less and the uns. That's what I was. I felt like I had no reason to live. So yeah, I absolutely wanted to die. Because it's such a struggle to when, my spirit, my brain, all that wanted to stop so bad, and just something bigger than me, I felt like I was battling demons for 6 months, essentially, is how it felt. It was just a constant inner struggle. So after I got on the list for rehab, I put myself under house arrest at my parents' until, and this is just really funny, I try, not to tell war stories. I've got war stories that can make Motley Crue uncomfortable. But this one was just, after I'd given my parents my keys and a wallet, and I'm on the waiting list for rehab, I still managed to sneak out of the house, and they weren't looking, and one of the guy who comes and mows the lawn, and he doesn't, in broken Spanish, I got him to drive me to the liquor store, which is just insane. This person I don't even know, the median in the neighborhood thing. I go with a complete stranger, I'm like, hey, can you give me a ride to the liquor store? That's crazy, And so then I went into rehab on October 2nd of 2013, right? Yes, October 2nd, 2013. I was there for 3 months, and when I learned a lot in there, and naturally, you know, I felt amazingly better physically, all of that. Did the first 3 steps in treatment, but I didn't get a sponsor when I was there because I knew I was coming back here and still wasn't listening to anything that they had to tell me. Really, I mean, I knew drinking, you know, I had to quit drinking, knew that, got it, check, got to quit drinking. That physical obsession was lifted, thank God. And then I came back here, went to one meeting in this building. It was Christmas Eve, the Alcathon, and you know, I felt good, I felt great, and that was the problem. I felt great, and I got this, feel good, and I didn't go to any more meetings, and I lasted approximately 3 weeks after getting out of treatment without going to any meetings, and once again went and stopped and got a drink, and I was like, and nothing happened. Nothing bad happened. It was amazing. Look at all that trouble for nothing. You know, I just drank 2 drinks, stopped, no problems. Yay, life is back to normal. 3 days later, the first nothing bad happened last time. It's the, you know, trick of relapse, right? Nothing bad happened that time, but something bad did happen this time. I drank and all hell broke loose. I mean, stumbling. I was with my best friend, and she's not one of us, and I'll never forget her saying, like, you know, I never really thought you were an alcoholic anyway. And I was like, you know what? I think you're right. I like that. Let's go with that. And I proved her wrong. And this is what she says to me now. She said, you know, I've never seen another person under the possession of something else. And so I woke up the next day feeling that same hopeless, useless, and oh God, how am I here again? How am I here again? I always say that, how am I here again? You put yourself here, Brittany, that's how you're here. And that for me, I believe, was my true surrender of, not just a surrender, because I thought, oh, I've surrendered to the fact that I'm an alcoholic. Okay, great, you know, it's all gonna get better now. But I surrendered to, oh, I'm an alcoholic, so that's why I'm gonna drink like one. It wasn't a true surrender, it was a surrender to the word. And that now I had a title to put on what was wrong with me, but I still wasn't prepared to come in here and do this work. And I didn't think that I really needed it. And I figured out pretty quickly that I did. And so I came back, a little bit with tail between my legs, how I felt, and came into this room. And just finally, I was so relieved. I had a couple of the girls talk to me, and people were very friendly, and I knew at that point, like, okay, I really have to do all those things they told me in rehab. I have to get a sponsor. I have to call people. I have to work these steps. And it was like something had just clicked over at that point. I'd kicked my own butt enough and seen that I had no idea what was good for me. I knew I was an alcoholic, but I had no idea how to treat myself, how to treat it, if that makes sense. And I could seemed to be working for you people in here. So it was like I just went on autopilot, like, tell me, you know, I got a sponsor, tell me what to do. And so I just started doing, for the first time, I started listening to someone else. And I started working the steps, and it's so true. You know, I always people say, oh, the relief is in the steps, and I would get so annoyed when I would hear that in treatment. Like, well, then let me do the damn steps, you know, if that's where the relief is. You know what I mean? Let me do it. And so I did it, and that is where the relief is. And now nothing externally in my life has changed. I haven't found the great job, the great boyfriend, or any of that. You know, that's what's so crazy, but I'm the happiest I've ever been, because going through all those steps, coming here, I'm comfortable in my own skin. Before, I always, you know, always had to have something to calm me down, something to calm me down, something to take the edge off, something to do this, always something, you know, always thinking the next thing I had to take to feel better, to feel this, to feel relaxed, this, that, and it was just, if I do feel uncomfortable, it's okay, I'm not going to die from it. It's amazing. And so this program has given me that. I have changed, and I think about other people, not as much as I should, but, you know, a heck of a lot more than I did. And I was telling my sponsor before the meeting started of, for years whenever anyone's done something nice for me and my family, like I always get immediately uncomfortable because if you do something nice for me, I know like, God, I'm gonna have to do something nice for you now, like that's where my brain goes. But it's so funny, whenever anyone in AA does something nice for me, I don't feel that way. I don't feel that because I know they're not doing it to get something back from me, which is amazing. I don't know if it's because knowing through this program that we're all so selfish and self-centered that we wouldn't do something unless we really wanted to, kind of thing. But it's an amazing gift. It's an amazing gift to be able to be around people who are just as neurotic as I am. It's awesome, and it's great. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. See, it's amazing that I can be. I have little brothers now who they're 20 years younger than me. My parents had them when I was 20, and the last couple years, I was so, even when I was there, I wasn't there around them, and I think about those things now, I should really set a good example for them. These normal human, things that good people think. And not that I'm a bad person, I'm just saying my head has been so far up my butt for so many years. I catch myself now thinking these things they're epiphanies. I should probably be a nice person. I should probably be nice to my mom, that would be good. That would be good to do something nice for her. Or I should worry. I should see how so-and-so's doing. They've been sick. Never before. I was too concerned with, either A, I was too concerned with myself, or I was too drunk, too messed up to care about helping or thinking about anyone. And so I get so excited now when I think about something nice. It's like, you're not a monster. It's such a relief. And so, yes, I'm eternally grateful and humbled by this program. And all I have to do every day, it's so simple, how little I have to do to stay sober, is make a gratitude list, call someone else, call my sponsor, read the big book. It's a tiny, for the relief from that obsession, from that craving, from that lifestyle, from being that person, it's what I have to do to stay sober is minuscule, it's tiny compared to what I get back every day. And I'm so thankful for it. And thanks for letting me share.